Thanks for joining me today for another episode of the Healthy AF podcast. With me is Steven Arena, founder of MASA Chips. Steven, thanks for joining us.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me, Zane.
I appreciate it. I know you guys are busy with lots going on there at MASA Chips.
Oh, yeah.
And I have to tell you, I appreciate your product on a personal level just because tortilla chips are like they were my go-to snack, and I had to let go of them when I
Yep.
became aware of seed oils. And so
It
you
sounds
guys were
exactly
like
like what happened to me. Well, the same
yeah.
exact thing.
That's what happened to
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
your
No, I,
story.
I, tortilla, I was, tortilla chips are great bachelor food, because you can just make a meal with get some ground beef and cheese and some chips, and you have dinner in 2 minutes,
Yeah, I
Um,
just had that for lunch, actually. I had
yeah.
ground beef and MASA chips and salsa for
No,
lunch.
that
Yeah.
is a very frequent lunch in the Tan Man household. I'll say that. So no, that was honestly tortilla chips were the last seed oil food I ever gave up because they just
Yeah.
filled such a useful role in my dietary life, especially before I got married and all that
Mhm.
other stuff, like having to cook for myself, living in random apartments. They made my life so much more convenient. I finally had to bite the bullet though, and then I lived a chip-free existence for a good year and a half until Masa was available.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, that's like the one temptation, I think. Yeah, as you said, it's the last thing you want to give up. And
Yeah,
so
yeah, for sure.
you're using tallow, obviously, in the MASA chips, which we'll
Yes.
get into. But what an alternative. I mean, just so what were you making? Did you start making your own in your kitchen, basically?
So the first time I ever made what would become Masa chips was Easter of 2021 in my parents' backyard. I bought a turkey fryer from Costco, a box of tallow and some organic tortillas, chopped them up on a cutting board and fried them successfully, not burning the house down. And that was the first time I had ever made tortilla chips of any kind,
Mhm.
and they were amazing. That's literally Moss chips. It's the exact same thing today. Um, the only difference between Moss chips today and Moss chips then is that back then the first time I ever made them, I used table salt, which is not a good type of salt for seasoning snacks. You got to use powdered salt. So the grains, it's the same salt. It's the grains are a little finer. So
Mhm.
but that was the only innovation that literally happened from that first prototype between then and now.
Right. The salt you use now is like sea salt. Is it the Redmond's?
It's the same. It was Redmond real salt. That's like the personal salt that I use. So it was
Yep.
always Redmond. It was literally
Mhm.
just going from table salt to powder salt. And
Oh, gotcha.
I certainly don't make them in my parents' backyard anymore.
Well, sure. Yeah. But so you just did a finer salt. And then for those joining, I know we jumped right into talking like everyone knows what we're
Yeah.
talking about. But if you're not familiar, masa chips are an incredible alternative to seed oil fried tortilla chips because they're made with, among other things, a great salt, tallow, which is obviously a saturated fat
Mhm.
coming from a cow. And you guys use grass-fed tallow, correct? And
Grass-fed beef tallow. Yes, it's basically bacon
beef
grease,
tallow.
but from a cow.
Right, exactly. Bacon grease from a cow. So it's not going to have the oxygenation and the create the oxidative stress in our bodies that seed oils do. And your corn has a very special process you guys called
Yes.
nixtamalization, essentially. Could you tell us about
Yes.
that?
Yes. So yeah, again, we didn't invent that. We're not here to
Right.
invent foods. We're here to just make them the way they're supposed to be made. And so nixtamalization is a process that was discovered or invented, whatever you want to call it, by the ancient Mesoamericans as a way to digest more adequately the corn that they were then growing at the dawn of agriculture, like several thousand years ago.
Mhm.
And similar to sourdough fermentation and how sourdough fermentation of sourdough fermentation of wheat produces bread that's more digestible, nixtamalization of corn produces corn that's more digestible. And basically, the process involves boiling the corn for an extended period of time in a solution of crushed up limestone and water. So the active ingredient here is the calcium hydroxide, which is the main building block of limestone, which is found all over the world, and it's one of the most common rocks that there is. And by doing that, the indigestible hard cellulose shell of the corn is broken down. This is the type of thing that you would excrete into the toilet if you were to eat the corn on the cob. That's broken down by nixtamalization, and certain proteins are made more bioavailable. The mycotoxins, which are often present on most grains, get deactivated, and like I think it's vitamin B3, I believe, is made more bioavailable. And so if you eat too much corn without doing this, it can actually be very bad for you. And so this happened in the American South. A lot of settlers ate corn, which was this new thing because they came from Europe, they never had it. They would eat this corn, they wouldn't nixtamalize it, and then they would get vitamin, I think B3 deficiency. I'm pretty sure it's called pellagra. I forget if it's B1 or B3.
Gotcha.
And so yeah, doing that and eating corn in that way, it's not very good for you. So you have to nixtamalize it. And yeah, so the MASA tortilla chips are naturally nixtamalized, unlike pretty much every other tortilla chip brand there is. And if you really want, I can get into the details about what's different about it. However, those combination of factors make the sort of ideal tortilla chip.
Correct. Right. So it's a guilt-free tortilla chip in a sense. No toxins. It's actually, and well digested.
Yeah.
I hear a lot of people
And it's
say
not
it
like,
doesn't.
but at the same time, it's not like new. It's not like I invented
Right.
a new
No.
method or a new ingredient like 0-calorie sweetener or something from some lab that comes out or some pumped out of some factory in
Right.
China. It's like, it's literally, if you were to make a tortilla chip 150 years ago, this is what it would be.
Right. This is the way they were made. And so I often refer to that when I'm discussing the impact of seed oils on our current, metabolic syndrome, epidemic of metabolic disease, is that we need to eat like we did 150 years ago before we had these seed oils in our food system. Nobody was obese. Heart disease was almost unheard of.
Right.
There was type 2 diabetes was unheard of as well. What didn't
Not
exist wasn't named. And so eating this way, this is how people use corn, is, cooking with tallow, using the nixtamalized corn, salt, only 3 ingredients in your chips.
Mhm.
Good luck finding any chip with only 3
Yeah.
basic ingredients that you would find in your kitchen already. That's kind of like, if you said it's almost an ancient food that you've just kind of brought back and made available.
That's
And
why, our company's called Ancient Crunch for exactly this reason. And I mean, speaking
Ancient
about like the
Crunch.
ingredients, right? The plain is easy, right? But try doing flavors with stuff that you can only find in an actual pantry. So many people like are
Mm,
buying processed foods full of stuff that's like no one's pantry contains like the bottle of citric acid that is put in the flavors of most snack products, Like Granny is
true.
not out there like going to the store to buy soy lecithin to add to whatever baked product she's making, So
Right.
you want to basically make foods as they would have been actually made in a kitchen of a real person 100, 200 years ago. And finding that is exceedingly difficult, even among brands that are so-called healthy or good for you.
Yeah. Where do you guys, you guys based in Miami? Is that correct?
No, we're based in, well, I live in New Jersey, and
Oh, you live in New
my
Jersey.
business
Okay.
partner lives in New York. So we're based in the Northeast. Our factory is in Western New Jersey, and
Oh, gotcha.
we make all of our products ourselves. Yeah. So a lot of food brands also, um, most food on the shelf is not made by the companies whose label is on the front. It's made by one of a few dozen sort of big food manufacturing businesses, food factories. They're
Mm,
called contract manufacturers that make the food for everyone and then stick whoever their customer is label on it. And so if you ever go to Whole Foods, like the Whole Foods 365, Whole Foods does not own food factories, right? Whole Foods
right.
buys stuff from some factory and they slap a label on it. That's where most food is made. And so most food brands do this and they don't actually make their own products. But from day one, we've always and will, as far as I can tell, always continue to make everything ourselves in house.
That's awesome. So an American product, and you guys actually make your own product on top of it.
Yeah,
So, I mean, we're
actually
talking
make it.
about,
Shock.
yeah. So,
Yeah,
I mean, so scaling must have been quite an ordeal for you. You go from making
it's
something
quite an
you
ordeal.
enjoy to like something you can
Yeah.
actually ship across the country and take orders.
Right. It is a perennial ordeal. And right now, in the lobby, we were talking about Vandy, the potato chips that we're launching soon, Vandy Crisps. And that's like, I couldn't just like go up, pick up the phone and like call our manufacturer and say, hey, making potato chips, get them ready in 3 months. Like, no, we're actually planning this week on Thursday night and Friday night our first 2 full production shifts of Vandy. And we're like doing it from 4 p.m. to like 1 in the morning. And because we have to make it at night because Moss is made during the day, right? Like we're
Oh,
busy during the
wow.
day. So we have to make Vandy at night. And we got all our equipment that we needed and we're like installing it and setting up and running through the production process literally this week. Or by the time this is released, probably a few weeks in the past. But
Right.
that's really what's required. We want more chips, we have to install new equipment. source more ingredients, like increase the real estate warehouse space that we have to store everything, like buy more pouch, like everything from the stainless steel to the food ingredients, like has to be done by us if we want to increase production.
Wow. And so for those who haven't heard Vandy, you might have heard by the time this comes out, but Vandy is your potato chip. You started with a
Yeah.
tortilla chip and then moved to the potato chip.
Yeah.
I'm sure people have been asking for
Yeah.
that as well. I think I've even seen that on
Yeah.
social media. People are, when's the potato chip coming out? And so you've got the
Yeah. Yeah.
Vandy. That's
Yeah. Since
awesome.
day one,
Exciting.
people are like, "Oh, this is great. Would love a potato chip here." I'm like, I would love to give it to you, but it's going to take us a little bit. And so
Yeah.
it's finally 2 years later. Our first launch date was July 19th, 2021, or no, sorry,
Mm.
2022. And so now July 19th, 2024, 2 years later, potato chips come out.
Wow. That's amazing. That's great.
Yeah.
That's a story. I
Pretty
mean, that's
fun.
an entrepreneur's
Excited.
story. I mean, that's it from like, I
Oh,
miss
yeah.
my chips. I'm going to make my chips. Now I'm going to sell my chips so other people can,
Yeah.
can enjoy the same thing. And that's the kind of the classic tale of entrepreneurs. You're solving your own problem, you end up solving a problem for other people.
Right.
That's
Right.
awesome.
Right. Make something that you would
Yeah.
use. Right. Don't try to make
Exactly.
money. Make something that you would want, and it'll follow. So it's been working so far. We'll see.
That's fantastic. You know, this whole, I think this movement away from seed oils, it was slow to start. I think people were catching on. There was a few pioneers in this, and there's
Mhm.
still a lot. What's funny to me is there's still a lot of people who don't get it or haven't looked closely enough at it. They don't realize the big deal.
Right.
Even people who are, I consider, intelligent, understanding health, understanding medicine, some
Right.
of them, and they don't understand the impact of these seed oils on our health. But yet, and then there's
No.
some who could sit here and simply explain it. But we've been told by, for decades now that, oh, this is the way to go. We have to go with the polyunsaturated fats. And yet
Right.
all we see is disease coming from this. And so they're looking at nutritional studies, which are of course backed by the same people who gave us the guidelines, right? They're financed by the people who are making often the fast food, the processed food that we're trying to avoid. And yet if she goes straight to the food chemists who have been warning us about these oils for several decades now, but they aren't heard by the nutrition scientists or the nutrition researchers. They're just they're in their lab saying, this is problematic. This creates oxidative stress in the human body, which then turns into a downstream host of problems. And so I think that's kind of like your banner here. I mean, that was your passion, right? To replace.
Yes. Yeah. So seed oils are one of those things that I think because of how quote unquote invisible they are, no one ever like lays any blame at their feet. Bread, gluten, very visible. You can taste it, you can smell it, you can touch it. It's good, it's delicious, it's prominent. Sugar, same thing. You can taste it. It's delicious. It's very prominent. So people can easily blame those things. But seed oils are this sort of like, that's why her book is named Dark Calories. It's like dark matter. It's like this giant piece. It's 20 to 30% of all calories we consume. That's a lot. That's like on par with the same amount of calories from like sugar or beef the average person might eat. It's a significant portion of our overall calories, and no one pays any attention to it, in part because it's sort of colorless and odorless and tasteless and yada, yada, yada. So it is like dark matter, right? No one's paying attention to any of this. And, there are people who focus on such small ingredients like, this food additive, MSG is bad. I'm not saying MSG is good. Of course it's bad. But or like Red 40, right? Red 40 is bad. But how much Red 40 does the average person consume? What, like 2 milligrams, like a week, maybe at that? And yet they're eating literal pounds of seed oils per month. So it's this thing that hasn't really been focused on. And it's great that, Kate Shannon's book, to your point about like handing these things out, it's actually funny. We're planning to do a thing in September where if you buy a box of MASA, you get a free copy of that book.
Oh,
like,
wow.
Literally going to be handing these things out. But yeah, it's cool. The other issue with them is that their effects are there's so many problems with them that people almost don't even believe it because it seems like too crazy to be true. And secondly, there's just so many to document that no one is able to ever even talk about all of them, right? I've been posting about seed oils on the internet and learning about them far earlier than that since at least the summer of 2021, so 3 years ago, and I'm reading Dark Calories and I'm like learning new things and new bad effects of seed oils
True.
every chapter. It's shocking. And so to go to your average person and say, look, all of these problems that you and your loved ones face and have faced throughout your, the past several decades, all of them can be very intimately associated with this one thing. That's kind of shocking to people. And so there's sort of like almost a disbelief that this is even true. So I think that contributes it to as well. And of course, like you said, the funding and whoever trying to suppress this doesn't help either. And even, as health influencers or promoters, even still, like sharing all that information, like a lot of people know that seed oils are bad. They follow Seed Oil Scout, they use the app, they know all this stuff, they know that seed oils are bad. But if you ask people, even in the space, to articulate how and in what ways they're bad, you don't get complete answers from most people. Most people don't even know what seed oils are. It's actually funny. We have an interview question when we're hiring people, and we're like, okay, you don't like seed oils, you're going to work at Ancient Crunch, sounds good. Name the seed oils. Tell me what they are, right? There's 8 or, 8 or 10, depending on who's counting, seed oils. And even people who are like self-avowed, like applying to a job at Ancient Crunch, they don't like seed oils, they can't even name all 8 of them or whatever. So it's not an obvious set of information. And I think there's so much more that could be done to promote and like explain everything to the audience, even of people who already know about seed oils, let alone the people who don't know about them.
Right. Yeah, it is a complex. It's complex in that we're so used to looking at calories or macronutrients. Very few people are looking at a cellular level or the level of the mitochondria, which is where the impact starts. And that's the beginning of our metabolism, energy production. It's down at the mitochondria. And these oils have such a negative impact on the mitochondria and our energy production, which it then impacts the blood sugar levels, the way our liver is trying to manage that, our brain telling the liver, hey, we need more sugar. But and so it's just this back and forth between organs that's basically causing this instability in our blood sugar and then eventually insulin resistance through this oxidative stress, plus the oxidative stress impact on arteries you're trying to explain that this also impacts, it's not the healthy cholesterol, it's these oils that are causing the inflammation, which then begins the plaque formation. As you said, there's several fingers to their impact on our health that it seems almost like we found this unbelievably terrible villain that is responsible for everything behind the scenes. And just behind Darth Vader, there's actually a much worse villain, the Sith.
It's like a James Bond movie. It's the super villain. It's almost like unbelievable. It's fiction, right? Because reality never seems to be that simple. But here we have this very simple thing that causes all these complex problems. It's like, that's crazy to think about.
And then as I've told people what we mentioned earlier, you don't really have to understand the biochemistry or even paleontology. You just have to go back about 150 years when we didn't have, and just to before we had them, 1800s, we didn't have these diseases. Once we brought these in, the more they ramped up, the more. Chris Kenobi and Kate Shanahan both have charted this to show the correlation is pretty strong, which means let's look closer. Let's look closer into what these things do. But I think it can be that simple as a history lesson. Before we had these oils, we didn't have metabolic disease. We had other problems. We didn't have metabolic disease. Oils came to the scene.
We had other problems. Disease. And some people use this to be like, oh, but in the 1800s, people died of scarlet fever, tuberculosis, or whatever. And it's like, yes, there were problems, and we don't have those problems anymore, but we have different problems. So it's like we traded one set of problems for a different set of problems. Why can't we just have no problems, right? What about that? That sounds good to me. I'd much rather have no problems.
We certainly don't need to create our own problems or manufacture our own problems, our own diseases.
Right.
And so I commend what you're doing, because I know it's, with any business owner, especially when you're chasing a passion or something that is important to you, you have to, you're taking your passion in the face of risk, and you're risking your time, your money, your energy, your reputation on creating something to bring to the marketplace that is based on your passion and belief system. That is, so this is, I would imagine, very much part of you.
In at very many levels and in very many ways. We joke. So I had a child recently, and And my wife,
Congratulations.
I'm like, finally, thank you. And now I'm like, you have your baby. I've had my baby for 2 years, Masa.
Exactly.
And now you finally get a baby of your own. Yeah, it basically is like in the sort of like creation sense, right? This byproduct of your essence that exists now in the world. That is exactly what it is. And it's not just the product, it's not even just the branding, it's like everything at every level is like every piece of thing that I've learned throughout however many years of existing has some role to play in building this and making it happen. Which is very cool.
Right. Right. You didn't make a widget. You didn't think of something, hey, this would be a cool thing to buy. This would go crazy on Amazon. This would be really, this particular demographic
No.
would love this. You're going to run with it. You have to convince, you're at a point where as we've discussed, you have there's a complex understanding of why this is important, complex understanding of our health that goes to a cellular level. That's not what people who are trying to make the product to take over a section. They're not thinking of complexity. They want simplicity.
No.
And so
No.
this is a venture of it's a passion of belief.
It's passion project, certainly.
It's a passion project, very much so, because of something you
Yeah.
understand. It's impacting. You could keep making them for you and your friends in your backyard if you wanted to, and not have the headache of trying to bring this to a world that doesn't understand the problem.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's hard enough to just make it, let alone, and like, you're right. If I can make a simple little TikTok video, be like, oh, look, little fidget spinners, like, go buy, fun, buy now. Very easy. If, in many ways, like the fact that it's so complicated makes it even harder to sell because
Yes.
in many ways, I have to like teach you first why
Right.
this is important, why the problem exists, what it means, and then say, here's a solution. And so we try very hard to not have to do that because I don't think America will never turn into a nation of like biochemists, no matter how hard we try.
Correct.
Right. Amateur biochemists. Right. And nor should it, let the biochemists do their thing. Right. There's more to life than lipid chemistry. So let the biochemists do their thing. And yet we should still have food that's edible. And I like to give this example. Like, think about, say, America in the post-war period, 40s, 50s, whatever. People were not obese. People did not have cancer. People did not have type 2 diabetes. Any of the problems that like are ubiquitous in the modern day, they just didn't have them. And is that because they worked out harder than us? Did they do CrossFit 6 times a week instead of 5 times a week? Did they do Weight Watchers? Did they buy more diet foods? Like, did they go the extra whatever to go get the pasture-raised eggs at the grocery store? No, there was no CrossFit. There was no Weight Watchers. There were no pasture-raised eggs at the store, or at least eggs that marketed themselves as such. There were no health food stores. There was just food stores, diners, restaurants, and they just bought the food and they ate it, and it was good for them. And they didn't have to think about it, right? They didn't pay attention to the polyunsaturated fatty acid content of whatever their latest meal was. They didn't even know what that means. And yet they were far healthier and more, physically durable, strong, and beautiful than we are. So I don't think the answer is to teach people of the modern day how to like think about all this stuff and like do all this chemistry and whatever. It's literally just make the food as simply good and without even anyone having to think about it as it used to be, right? Ideally, in 10 years, if your average MASA Chips customer doesn't even know what a seed oil is, I'll be happy, right? Because that means I'll have done my job. I don't want you to have to know about this, if anything. I want you to just go live your life and buy the food, and you're like, oh, that tastes good, I'm going to buy this, and then you're healthy. That's how it should work. And if we are unable to bring that world about, you're never going to see the mass of people become healthy again. Yes, you'll have us, right? Very well-studied and intense and disciplined people who like are going to figure it out on their own. But we're like, what, 5% of the population, maybe, if that. If we're going to fix the health of the 95% of remaining people, we can't rely on them to wake up and discover biochemistry. They're just going to we have to make the food better without them even knowing about it.
Yeah. And to your point, like go back 50 or 75 years, 1950s, they weren't scared of potatoes. They weren't scared of corn or bread or anything like that either. They were eating fruit when they had it available. They weren't trying to divide up their plate into macros or
No.
do extreme diets. And yet
Did people even know what
there
a
was,
macro was? Like, did people talk about protein in the 90s? Like, did your average person know what protein and carbohydrates were? Like, I don't even know. Like, even running, this is super interesting. Like from the history of like Nike as a company, it's like very interesting. When Nike was started in the 60s, I believe, running was a thing you did to compete in a sport in like high school and maybe college, right? It was an amateur athletic activity. It was a competitive thing. You wouldn't see someone running down the street like jogging. If you got a time machine and went out for a jog in a 1950s suburb in like a t-shirt and whatever, like people would have thought you were literally insane. And yet those people again were still more fit than we are. Like, right, and this kind of the whole thing with Nike is that running shoes didn't really exist before Nike. Nike kind of invented that. And so this whole idea that we can have running shoes, like that wasn't a thing. Other than for the sport participants themselves.
For competitive sport.
So yeah, like we run more. Right. We do all this stuff. We run more. We spend so much time and effort on our health, and yet we are sick. Right? Isn't that crazy?
For sure. Yeah, we're going through a lot of effort, and I think that's where we have to see we're doing more than ever. We try more diets than ever. We're doing more activities. There's always some new gizmo to help us do X, or either work out better or measure our breath for, are we burning more fat or carbs, or there's some sort of like thing.
Mm-hmm.
And yet the root cause, we're still ignoring the root cause of what seems to be driving the obesity, the diabetes, the heart disease, and who knows what else, but the oxidative stress and inflammation that we causing this disease. It's a toxin that has now become intrinsic in our food system.
Yeah, it's like we're eating this thing that's fundamentally incompatible with human biology. It's like you try to put diesel in a gas truck. The outcome is not going to be good. However, when you do this with seed oils in the human body, it's even worse. Because if you put diesel in a gas truck, the diesel is just going to go in the engine and it's going to gum it up and like screw everything up, right? But the engine is not connected to like the axles and the tires and the frame and the air conditioner and all these other things, right? So yeah, it will break the car, and yet it will still only break one part of the car, which is namely the engine. Whereas the human body is much more interconnected, and so you put seed oils in the body and it breaks everything. Our tires, which like, I don't know, our skin, right, start to get acne and sunburn and skin cancer. Our liver starts to get cirrhosis and fatty liver disease. Our gut gets IBS and we can't digest our food, and we have, the more extreme cases, you get like ulcerative colitis and all these other like very painful conditions. Our blood sugar gets completely messed up. You get hungry because you're surrounded by fat, which is usable as energy. And this is kind of the thing that I guess, which is one of my key insights from Dark Calories. That's pretty cool. I don't think many people know about this. You're surrounded by fat, right? Which your body's supposed to be able to burn for energy. The problem is the fat is seed oils. It's polyunsaturated fats. And by burning them, you throw off toxins. And so your body sees that and is like, nah, I don't want to burn that because that will release the pent up toxins into my body that's already inundated by stress, and I can't deal with that. So what does it do? It just stores it, stores it away, like squirrels burying nuts underground. And you eat more seed oils, and it's more energy that you can't use. So then your body buries more of it in your fat. And yet, even though you're surrounded by this fat, since you can't use it, your body's still hungry.
Right.
You still hunger because this energy you're surrounded by is unable to be used. It's like you have a car and you have a bunch of, like, you're going off-roading and you have a Jeep with your gas cans like strapped to the back, but like you put a lock on the gas cans and forgot the key. So, and you're stranded in the desert, now you have no gas, but you can't get it out because the cans are locked, right? You're surrounded by energy. The modern American is surrounded by energy that they're unable to access, which means they just get absurdly hungry, right? All the time. And they're always trying to eat to fill the gap of like more energy, and they never get satisfied, and then they wonder why. And then at the same time they get obese, and then people are like, well, stop eating. And they're like, well, I can't stop eating. And they can't. They're right, because their brains are literally starving for energy despite the fact that they're surrounded by it. And so I think that aspect does not really enter into the like weight loss discourse very much, which I think is a shame, because you end up having people who are like, work out harder, fat ass. And then like, that's not very helpful because they literally can't. They don't have the energy to, even though it like looks like they have energy to. Their body can't burn it because it's so toxic. And then on the other hand, then you have people who are saying like, oh, you're obese. Oh, you're fine. You're healthy. It's not a problem. And it's like, obviously it's a problem. Like, how is this not an issue? And you get these two sides and they fight after each other. And they're like, work out harder. No, body positivity. And it's like they're constantly talking past each other. And the end result is that people are like frustrated, confused, and still fat. Unless the knowledge, as espoused by Kate Shanahan in her book, and this like fundamental nature of seed oils is revealed and like communicated well enough over and over and over again, like that will never change. And so it's very important that people understand what's actually going on to take the, I guess, middle ground and say, yes, sickness actually is, or obesity is actually bad for you. You should not like be proud of being sick walking around. Right. And at the same time, there's not really anything you can do about it because your chemistry, your physiology is working against you, right? You're walking around and your body is in the state of constant terror and fight or flight because it's inundated by toxins and starving to death, even though you're surrounded by what appears to be energy. And so you have to take both approaches and like solve it at its root, which I suppose is nothing more than the very long and arduous process of removing all of the seed oils stuck in your body fat that can take years and replacing it with better energy. And that's what you need to do. And that takes a long time.
Yeah. I think it's something like 5 tablespoons corn oil, for instance, as an example, that would be, which is what I think most people end up ingesting in a day, or their average American ultra processed food diet. That'd be like 70 ears of corn to get that much.
Right.
What? And which no one would eat. So we have an unnatural dosage of these oils coming into our system on a daily, weekly basis, like you said, that gets built in our fat. And it takes the half-life of which to process it out is approximately 2 years is the current estimation. Just to get a half-life, get half of that. If you put no more into your body, it would take
if you stop
2 years just
immediately,
to get half of it. Yeah.
7 years.
Yeah, really, it would. Yeah.
Right. And that's if you had no new incoming, which a lot of people like, it's very hard to avoid. Right.
It's almost impossible. Even when you're trying.
It's almost impossible. Yeah. We're trying to fix it. And obviously, but like snack foods is a very big category, but it's still one small category of what people eat. Right. People eat out at restaurants, they eat desserts, they buy breads, they buy baked goods, they buy frozen dinners, frozen meals, whatever. It's like seed oils are in all of it. So yeah, it's a very long and difficult process. However, the fortunate thing is that you do notice very dramatic changes very quickly, as you may, I don't know if you or other people may attest to this, because like half-lives, the way it works is like the biggest gains are had up front, right? It takes a while to fully get it done, but you can make a lot of progress very quickly.
Right. Those first 2 years, that first halving is pretty significant. As you get it down closer to 10, 12%, you have fewer symptoms. Doesn't mean you're done. That means you keep going, but it makes it a lot easier to lose the weight, get yourself healthy, and reduce the inflammation for sure. And go back to where maybe the only source of it is from whole seeds or whole nuts, if those are in your diet. But that's where those oils can come into your body in a manageable
like in a way that your body can actually tolerate. Right. This is kind of the thing. Well, sunflower oil is bad. Well, should I stop eating sunflower seeds? Well, I didn't say that, but are you eating 2,000 sunflower seeds a day?
Right.
No, you're not. Right. MASA chips are made out of corn. Corn has oils in it. However, if you look at the nutrition panel, so like when we create the nutrition panel for MASA chips, it's like you basically take the different components of each ingredient and add it all up. And the amount of fat in general, let alone polyunsaturated fat from corn in a serving of MASA chips is basically zero, right? There's not that much corn in a single chip, and there's even fewer grams. It's basically like microscopic, minuscule amounts of oil in every single seed. This is why it's so insidious, right? Like you said, you would not eat 100 ears of corn or 2,000 sunflower seeds or whatever it is. And so adding up all the oils of all those things, like when you concentrate it, then you get a problem. And this is also the importance of like keeping the food whole for the most part. So if you find a seed in nature, the seed will also likely have a corresponding amount of vitamin E, which Kate, of course, talks about in the book. It will have a likely corresponding amount of vitamin E, which is nature's fat antioxidant that keeps the seed oils stable and keeps them from breaking down. And so a lot of people, because I always talk about the benefits of supplementing vitamin E if you're trying to detoxify from seed oils. And people ask, oh, but I found this vitamin E and it's got like sunflower in it or whatever. And I'm like, well, yeah, vitamin E comes from seeds. That's the whole point, right? In seed oils, it's pulled out And so you're eating this thing in isolation without the corresponding amount of like antioxidants. But when you eat an actual seed, you get all the antioxidants. It's fine. I mean, I personally don't eat a lot of seeds in general because there are other anti-nutrients, especially in many nuts. Grains are ironically one of the better ones, but still, you're concentrating this like very toxic thing. So yeah, that is the difficulty with it.
So here you created a very delicious, indulgent food. Indulgent, something we
Right.
would put as a staple. You and I might consider it a
Right.
staple, but because a chip is considered a quote unquote indulgence or whatever fast food, but yet
Right.
you've taken away the toxic side of it. And so I say, God bless you. Thank you for doing that. Because it's
Oh, my
because
pleasure.
you know I can't all put the turkey fryer up in the backyard and start frying up tortillas, and again that'd be that as you said, it could be a fire hazards. Yeah, absolutely. And now rolling out the potato chip for us all to enjoy. You know, we have the tortilla
Yeah.
versus the potato. We have
You get
the
to compare it.
chews. We got both. The
Oh, you
churro.
don't
Tell me about the churro.
churro?
Do you have a churro chip? A
Oh, we do have a
churro.
churro chip. Right. So this is a fun one. Again, sugar. People commonly blame sugar as the source of all our modern maladies. So it doesn't really hold water though, because if you look at a graph of sugar consumption per capita over the past several hundred years, we
Right.
actually eat a similar amount of sugar today as we did in the 1920s. And sugar consumption was actually even higher in the 80s and 90s than it is today. A large part of this is due to the promulgation of zero-calorie sweeteners that have replaced sugar. But nonetheless, we don't actually eat an amount of sugar that other people who in the past were skinny did not eat. You know, we eat the same amount of sugar. And so the interesting thing is that like sugar's gotten all the bad rap, and in my opinion, seed oils are to blame. And so again, we're not here to make alternative newfangled foods. I wanted to make a churro chip because churros are delicious, and people like delicious foods, which is fine. Our taste buds are in many ways designed to tell us that the healthy things are delicious. It's just that they get hijacked by unnatural ingredients. And so if you make your delicious foods with the natural ingredients, then it's almost always likely the case that they're going to be good for you, right? You don't like
Right.
dogs, right? Dogs don't consult a USDA nutrition pyramid before they go and eat whatever. Or like a wolf in nature or a deer or a
Right.
lion, they're not asking their doctor for if they should eat that antelope or not. They just eat what tastes good to them, and it serves them pretty well, right? They
Mhm.
survive, they reproduce, they're strong, they're healthy. And so humans are sort of the only people that kind of have this inherent mistrust of our own sensory intuition, right? The modern human is like, "Oh, that tastes good. Oh boy, that must be bad for me." Right?
Mhm.
That's only a modern, maybe even a modern American sort of psychological condition
Right.
where you have this very explicit association with something that tastes good being bad for you. So I personally don't buy any of this. And my realization here is that if it's made with truly natural ingredients, as in you could find this in like nature somewhere, then
Mm.
you should use your taste buds to guide your eating decisions. And so the key, of course, is that truly natural must be a very aggressive like bar to pass. And so none of the zero-calorie sweeteners that exist today are truly natural things. Aspartame is, of course, that was the first one, right? In the 80s, Diet
Right.
Coke, aspartame, Splenda, I believe is the brand name. That causes people eventually to have like seizures and go blind and a whole bunch of other stuff because half of the aspartame molecule is methanol, which methanol is an accidental byproduct of like fermentation. And so back in the days when people were running moonshine, if they made it wrong, you could get methanol in the moonshine and that would make people go blind. And so that's one of the reasons why like moonshine is not widely consumed. And it was very dangerous to do all this because you don't want to eat methanol. Anyway, half of the aspartame molecule is methanol.
Mm.
Sketch, right? And then you have the more modern, like healthy ones, right? There's this agave syrup, which is not zero
Right.
calorie, but agave is actually, I believe, more fructose or something. It's like
Yes.
more calories per unit of sweetness than actual sugar is. So I was like, well, how is this any benefit? How is this helping anyone? Then there's the other ones that are actually zero calorie, like stevia or xylitol. Xylitol comes from it's like a byproduct of GMO corn, and stevia was actually used by the South American tribes where the stevia leaf is grown and the extract is used to sweeten stuff. It was actually used by them as a sort of natural birth control, like an anti-fertility medication or supplement. And an interesting story about this is when my wife was pregnant. We don't eat stevia as a rule in general, because I know about this. But when I was pregnant, someone gave her some like little electrolyte powder thing, I don't know, that had stevia in it, and she started throwing up within 30 minutes.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, well, yeah, you're throwing up because your body wants to get this like anti-fertility chemical out of your pregnant body, you know? And that's like a very common sweetener in all these like health foods, especially that like women consume because they tend to be more averse to sugar than men are. So you have all of these then like monk fruit extract or whatever. Like who did your grandma eat monk fruit? Did your great grandparents eat monk fruit? I have photos of my grandparents and they look very good and none of them ever ate monk fruit. But it's all this kind of silliness. Oh, and then allulose. That's another fun one. Allulose
Oh,
comes
yeah.
from one factory in China. One factory in China
Really?
that all the allulose that like whether it's RX sugar or what is the cereal that has it? I don't know. All of the allulose containing things, a lot of very popular in keto products.
Mhm.
It's like this thing that was invented 20 years ago and comes from one factory in China, and that makes it sweet. And it's like, why is that a thing, right? So yeah, anyway, we wanted to make a sweet chip, and I wanted to sort of like use this as an example to further the whole philosophy here. We're not going to use allulose. We're not going to use stevia. We're not going to use any of this shit. We're going to use sugar because what's a churro? It's cinnamon and sugar, right? So we got the best cinnamon we could get. We got the best sugar we could get. It's regeneratively farmed and organic from somewhere in Florida. And it's like, relatively unrefined. It's like, you take the sugar cane, you juice it, you dry it out, and the crystals are sugar. So we decided to throw that into the churro chip, and it's freaking delicious. And it's not going to make you fat. So that's what we decided to do with the churro one. And other flavors in a similar way have very intense stories about them, like the lime flavored chip. I was like, that was the first flavor we ever did. And I'm thinking, hey, lime chips are very popular, that you can buy them in every store. Every brand has a lime flavor. So let's do a lime chip. Must be a good idea. And so I already like committed to making lime before I actually found out how to get the lime flavor. And so I was like, hey, we're going to make lime. So I started to go find lime powder. And I'm looking around and like, hey, wait, I can't find lime powder. All I could find was stuff that had lime in the ingredients list, but I couldn't find anything whose only ingredient was limes. The common thing that I found was lime powder containing maltodextrin, which is very prevalent on the flavor on the ingredients labels of many lime flavored chips that I won't name names of. Another thing was this combination of using lime oil, which is like the essential oil, extracted in a similar way. Seed oil is like a highly concentrated extracted essence of like lime, these volatile molecules that have this flavor. It's not sour though, it just has this lime aroma. So they combine lime oil with citric acid, because of course citric acid is sour, as all acids are. And people are like, oh, what's wrong with that? Citric acid, citrus fruit. I eat citrus fruit. Citrus fruit's good for you. Citric acid that you find in food labels is not like dried up oranges. It is a byproduct of black mold that is produced in like these bioreactors and again some factory in the Far East, and combined and like sold in these like giant pallets full of this white powder. So yeah, they have lime oil and citric acid. They got maltodextrin. They got all this stuff. But I was like, but there are no limes. So what we ended up having to do is we had to buy organic limes and turn them into a powder ourselves. So here we are at the chip factory, like buying up giant like industrial or commercial sized dehydrators. And I had my guys there with like a deli slicer, slicing little lime discs to put into the dehydrator and then dehydrate the limes so they were dry and we could crumble them up into a powder and then put that in the chips. That's what we did for like 5 months. And it was like so work intensive until I discovered freeze drying, which is a cool process where you take a food and you put it in a vacuum and you kind of lower the temperature down at the same time. And not to get too into the chemistry here, but in a vacuum, the boiling point of water is a lot lower. And so the water boils off and gets vaporized and out into the atmosphere, but you don't cook the food because the temperature is so low because it's in a vacuum. So the temperature is low and it's boiling. That's freeze drying. And so that's cool because it's able to produce this like dried version of the food that maintains all of its biochemical characteristics. An example of this is the dehydrated limes turn brown because it's like, dehydrated around 105 degrees, and so they would oxidize. Whereas the freeze-dried limes stay green because they don't oxidize because the temperature is kept cool. And the byproduct of this is that the vitamin C, which is heat sensitive, is not deactivated. You get this nice color, and you reduce a little bit of the bitterness. And so, like, in order to do this, I had to go find some company that specialized in freeze drying, because industrial freeze dryers are like $500,000. They're very expensive pieces of equipment. And so now we're like sending them organic limes, and they're like putting them in a blender, freeze drying them, and then sending us the resulting like powder. And that is literally the lengths I had to go through to get a pure organic lime powder for a seasoning. And this is like the most common tortilla chip flavor in the world,
but not commonly done that way.
Not commonly done. No one does. No one does it that way.
No one does it that way. You had a unique process there. Wow. Well, so yeah, that's amazing. I mean, that is amazing. The lengths you've gone to create a real food that you have confidence is going to be detrimental to someone's health. And I think that says a lot about your intentions for making this product. It's not an easy, it's not an easy process. You could have found an easier business to create for sure. Yeah. So we could have drop shipped some widget from some widget from Alibaba on like TikTok shops. Exactly. Yeah. No, this has integrity all the way through, skimping on ingredients. And so I think that's
plastic. I mean, I don't know how much time you have for a rant on plastic, but like, I don't even want to get started on that. Like, everything in the food industry is in plastic. It's true. I mean, we're not perfect. I have, and there's actually something that people can apply to their daily lives, right? So you don't want plastic in your food. You don't want plastic in your body. So you can't always avoid plastic, but some plastics and in some situations are worse than others. And so if you go back to high school chemistry class, the things that accelerate the chemical reactions are heat and surface area. And so if you have a plastic water bottle, probably not the best, but if you have a plastic water bottle out in the car and it's hot and then you go and drink the water, you'll taste the plastic because the heat accelerates the rate of the plastic dissolving in the water. Another thing is that, like a plastic bag of chips, there's very little actual physical contact between the chips and the plastic inside the bag, right? If you imagine all the chips are little triangles and there's like a few little points geometry style touching, there's not a lot of contact. But if you have, again, water in a plastic bottle, like all of the molecules of water are touching that plastic at some point. And so there's much more surface area to accelerate the rate of dissolving of plastic and water. And then the last thing is like plastic is a sort of fat soluble molecule, a covalent molecule for those that are so inclined. Plastic is covalent and so is fat. And so what that means is that fat dissolves plastic. And so a plastic water bottle is bad enough, but a plastic bottle of olive oil, or even worse, seed oils, is horrendous, because seed oils, being a pure fat, are the exact type of chemical that is most easily able to dissolve the plastic it's contained in. And all seed oils are shipped in plastic. I will certainly attest to that. And so we've had to go through great lengths to reduce plastic in our process. One example, which is like we're still working on. I want to be able to buy 55-gallon like steel drums of tallow because we're going through that much of it. And it's like a bigger container size and whatnot. And I want to be able to pump out the tallow from the drums. And there are plenty of pumps that you can stick into a big drum. It looks like an oil drum, literally. Like it's what you think of when you think of an oil drum. Pumps that you stick in and bring out the tallow. But all the pumps have plastic in them. All the FDA approved pumps have like Teflon inside of them. And in some cases, it's much worse, much larger surface area than others. And I'm like, I don't want to do this. And so we've been scouring like the pump manufacturing industry for months, trying to find a pump with like as little possible plastic in it as we conceivably can. Like also frying, right? We got these deep fryers with a filter, and so you drain the oil, the tallow through the filter at the bottom, and then it's got this sort of like hose that you can use to like get the oil back up. And again, it's hot, right? It's draining out of the deep fryer. It's like 300 something degrees. They sent us like vinyl hoses on the filter, expecting us to then put the oil back into the fryer 300 degree oil back into the fryer through a vinyl hose. And like, not only is vinyl plastic, it's like one of the worst and most like volatile plastics there is. And it's only used in, you know, in the modern domestic setting in like wastewater. You don't make, or you shouldn't, at least some people I think do, make drinking water pipes out of vinyl. So I'm like, there's no way we're doing this. So then we had to go find a custom stainless steel fabricator to make flexible stainless steel hoses that we could put onto the thing and get the oil back without it touching plastic. And I'm thinking, all of the customers of this fryer, and it's a pretty big frying company, are not doing this. I know this for a fact. Like, they don't even offer this as an option. And so you go to a restaurant, and you're unsuspecting, you know, person. You show up at a restaurant, you're like, oh, la, like I'm getting donuts or French fries or whatever. Not only is it all in seed oils, it's also the hot oil. Remember what we said about chemistry before? Surface area, temperature, and like covalent. It's all of it at once. Hot oil in plastic going back in your fryer. And I'm like, this is, I have no words for any of this. But yeah,
they're filtering the oil and putting it back in. They're reusing that oil over and over again. So beyond the reuse, it's the filtration process is hot oil and plastic, like I said.
Yeah, exactly. It's going back again and again and again. And I mean, you should filter it because you don't want the buildup of these particles and whatnot. Right. However, not pumping it through plastic. And it's like we're literally eating melted plastic and seed oil. That is what you eat. If you are a standard American and you eat food, you eat melted plastic dissolved in seed oils. And it's like, what are we doing?
Wow. Yeah. Health crisis, basically, is what we're doing.
Hence, of course. And yeah, I don't know if we have, and for those that, I mean, sometimes this frustrates me when people are like, oh my God, this is so bad. And they don't explain why. Plastic is, of course, bad. I learned this from Dr. Anthony J something. He wrote a book called Estrogeneration. Plastics mimic estrogen, and estrogen is a reproductive hormone. And most foreign chemicals in the body can't get into your cell nucleus, which is the site of the DNA of a cell. It's, you know, the safest place in your cells. For that reason, the cell nucleus protects itself against foreign invaders of all sorts. Bacteria, viruses, chemicals, whatever. However, because of its reproductive nature, and the whole point of reproduction is replicating DNA, like sex hormones can get into the cell nucleus. And once they're there, they can do whatever. And so this is fine in the case of normal reproduction. But plastics mimic estrogen, which is a sex hormone. And because of that, foreign plastic chemicals will enter the cell nuclei of your body and just do shit. They're not supposed to be there, and they're one of the only types of foreign molecules that can actually enter your nuclei, and they'll just screw stuff up. And so, like, when you have to deal, and so his book Estrogeneration talks about all the things that cause, you know, low testosterone, high estrogen. Plastic is chief among them for this very reason, and it's potentially destructive to your reproductive abilities as well because of this. So yeah, plastic, no good. Seed oil is no good. None of it very good.
We have this ultimate combination of every restaurant and pretty much every food you buy on the shelves. Wow.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. You don't eat at restaurants. It's hard. It's hard to go out, huh?
It's hard. It's pretty difficult. I use Seed Oil Scout to find seed oil free restaurants. You can do a pretty decent job, actually, if you don't do it too frequently, and you also don't care that much, right? If you really wanted perfection, there's probably like 3 restaurants you could eat out at. But if you're doing it once a month or once every few weeks, like the Teflon from the pan that they're cooking the onions in or whatever, it's not going to kill you. Although it is a Teflon pan, which is plastic, and it dissolves very, very readily. But the big thing to watch out for is the deep fryer. Most restaurants that are in this sort of like fast food, fast casual, like most restaurants that actually cook the food as you order it, you can compel them to use butter or olive oil, real olive oil, which any sort of decent restaurant will have in stock. And you can compel them to use it. The only thing you're never going to be able to get is them to switch out the deep fryer for whatever. Right. Like they don't have talent to put in the deep fryer. So if you remember that rule and don't order anything deep fried, and make sure to request real butter or olive oil to the waiter, then at any decent restaurant you can get by. And of course, some restaurants are better than others.
Right. True. Correct. Yeah, I've asked that myself. Well, thank you. Man, I know it's a crazy week for you guys.
Yeah. Oh, indeed. Yes.
Rolling things out. So I appreciate you taking the time, and that you guys offered our listeners actually a coupon code. It's Zane, pretty easy, ZANE. You get 20% off the first order, which I appreciate you guys giving that to us. So, but I want to let everybody know, find you. Where do people find you guys? Instagram, you guys, cool marketing, by the way. Always had cool marketing from the get-go, got everybody's attention. It was like a
Thank you.
throwback, right? It was a kind of a retro thing.
Again, that's what we're trying to do, right? Like, I want it to be cool and like attractive. I don't want to sit here and lecture you about seed oils. I want you to just be like, oh, I like this. It tastes good. And then you eat it and you're healthy without you even realizing it. That's the goal. So and we're kind of celebrating this, this world where people don't have to worry about all of these detriments to our health. It's like this world where health and beauty and strength are just, commonplace and ubiquitous and like easy. Like it's easy to achieve them, which ultimately I think we'll be able to do, but it's going to take a long time to get there. Anyway, people can find us at MASA Chips, MASA_chips on Instagram and Twitter, TikTok. I don't know if anyone goes on TikTok. And our website is MASA Chips, MASACHIPS.com. And my personal Instagram handle is really tan man, if that's of interest. I post occasionally when I'm not putting together potato scrubbers and installing water filters. I'll post on there occasionally.
Gotcha. The life of an entrepreneur. Yeah, getting your hands dirty. That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I appreciate you sharing your story, because again, I knew it was something this unique, and it's just it was an act of passion. It came from a personal place of personal passion and belief, and it was a personal drive that you wanted to help other people. You wanted to share what you had, the solution you come up with for this. And so appreciate your work. Appreciate your time coming on here in the middle of this busy week, rolling out Bandy Chips, which I'm looking forward to trying very soon.
We get one of the first boxes. I'll tell you that.
Okay. Awesome. The first boxes. Yeah, I know it's going to be real popular in my house for sure. And again, and I appreciate it. I haven't tell you in person, but we had the Nashville's, we had a health summit last year here, hosted by the Meat Mafia, and that was we kind of pulled together after the Hack Your Health Summit last year with Ken Berry and myself, and you guys sponsored that, which I really appreciate. That was a big favorite. The MASA Chips were definitely, people were like, we're definitely scavenging for more. Are there any extra MASA Chips? Like, there's no such thing as extra.
There's
MASA
never
chips.
Enough. There are never enough MASA Chips.
It's like extra bacon. It just doesn't exist. So
my pleasure.
Exactly.
Happy to do more in the future. Yeah, good stuff.
Awesome. Thank you again, Steven.
Cool. Thanks, Zane. Catch you later.